My husband texted me at 1:47 a.m. from a beach resort 3 hours away. I married my coworker tonight. I stared at the screen for a long moment. Then I typed back one word, okay. By noon the next day, his brand new wife was calling me, furious, demanding to know why her cards had stopped working. At 1:47 a.m., I wasn't fully asleep. I was in that thin, restless space between dreaming and waking, the kind of half-sleep you fall into after years of sensing something is wrong, but not being able to name it. The phone buzzed. I read the message twice before it landed. Daniel had married Priya. 8 months of an affair I never confirmed, but always suspected. He didn't want to pretend anymore. I didn't cry. I think some part of me had been grieving this marriage for months already, watching him grow distant, watching him flinch every time his phone lit up at dinner. 7 years together, 7 years of covering his failed investments, making excuses to his parents when the business nearly collapsed, smiling in family photos while quietly holding the whole thing together. And this was how it ended. A text message from a beach resort at 1:45 in the morning. I typed one word back, okay. Then I blocked his number. I opened my laptop and one by one removed Daniel's access from every bank account, every card, every shared login we'd built over the years, because there was one thing he had always conveniently forgotten. The house he'd been living in like a king, the house he walked into every evening expecting dinner on the table, was never his. I bought that house myself, in cash, after my father passed away, before the wedding. Daniel had simply moved in. Before sunrise, I had a locksmith at the door, changing every lock in the house.
At 8 a.m., the doorbell rang. 2 police officers stood on the porch. Daniel had filed a complaint. According to him, I was illegally locking him out of his own home. I didn't argue. I simply handed the older officer the property deed and, for good measure, screenshots of the 1:47 a.m. text. He read both, handed them back, and said, not unkindly, "Ma'am, if the house is legally yours, you're under no obligation to let anyone in, including your husband." They left within 5 minutes. I spent the rest of the morning packing Daniel's belongings into boxes, not out of spite, out of practicality. I didn't want a single trace of him left by the time he came back with his new wife to make a scene, because I already knew he would. He did. By early afternoon, Daniel arrived with Priya on his arm, and, as expected, his mother trailing a few steps behind, already mid-sentence before she reached the porch. "You're the reason this family fell apart." I kept my voice level. "I didn't break up a family, Margaret. Your son started a new one." Daniel, still convinced 2 sentences and a familiar tone would soften me the way they always used to, stepped forward. "Open the door." "Why would I do that? It's my house, too." I smiled. "Show me your name on the deed first." His jaw tightened. That was the moment his composure cracked, not from guilt, but from the sudden, dawning realization that the ground beneath his confidence wasn't as solid as he had assumed. Priya, oblivious to what was unraveling, chose that exact moment to speak up. "Wait, why aren't my cards working?" I turned to her, almost gently. "Which cards?" "The ones Daniel gave me for the honeymoon." I laughed, not cruelly, just at the sheer absurd timing of it. Daniel stared at the ground. "Those weren't Daniel's cards," I said. "They were mine. I closed them last night." Priya's face drained of color. "What do you mean?" "I mean, the luxury resort you two were staying at in Cox's Bazar, the one from your little wedding trip, was being paid for this whole time by his old wife's money." Nobody said anything for a moment. Margaret's mouth stayed open, no sound coming out. Daniel's face had gone pale and dry, and Priya was staring at her new husband like she was seeing him, really seeing him, for the very first time. I gestured toward 12 cardboard boxes stacked neatly in the garage. Everything's packed. Take it and go. Daniel's temper finally broke through. You're going to regret this. I didn't respond right away. Instead, I walked back inside for a moment and returned holding a plain brown envelope. The second he saw it, something in his expression shifted, a flicker of recognition, then fear, because he knew exactly what could be inside that envelope, and he knew that if its contents ever saw daylight, it wouldn't just end his brand new marriage, it would end everything. I held the envelope in one hand, calm, unhurried. Before you take your things, Daniel, there's something you should know. I started looking into your finances a long time ago, long before that text message, and what I found you couldn't have imagined. I opened the flap slowly. Do you remember the business trip to Chittagong 11 months ago, the one you told me was for a supplier meeting? His face went rigid. There was no supplier. There was a second loan, taken out under both our names, without my signature, using a forged copy of my ID. $40,000, Daniel, routed through an account I only found because I happened to check our joint credit report 3 months ago and noticed an inquiry I never authorized. Margaret's hand flew to her mouth. I've already spoken to a lawyer, I continued, and a forensic accountant. Everything is documented. Dates, transfers, the forged signature, all of it. I wasn't planning to use any of it unless I had to. I looked at him steadily. But you texted me at 1:45 in the morning like I was an inconvenience you were finally free of. So now I don't feel like protecting you anymore. Priya took a step back from her husband of less than 12 hours, her expression somewhere between horror and disbelief. "Daniel," she said quietly, "what is she talking about?" He didn't answer. He couldn't. I closed the envelope and held it out, not to him, but to Margaret. You should read this before you decide who broke this family apart. Then I turned, walked back into the house that had always only been mine, and closed the door behind me. Not with anger, just quietly, finally, like closing a chapter that was over for a long time before he ever admitted it.